Stop working in 10 years. The real plan for early retirement. Imagine never setting an alarm clock again. No Monday meetings, no waiting until 65 to finally live your life. While your coworkers are grinding through another decade of 9 to 5, you're sipping coffee on a Tuesday morning, completely free from the paycheck prison that traps 95% of Americans for 40+ years. Sounds impossible? Here's what's shocking. You could stop working in just 10 years without winning the lottery, inheriting a fortune, or building the next tech empire. The secret isn't luck or some get-rich-quick scheme. It's a system that quietly turns your dollars into employees until they make more money than you do. Most people accept the lie that retirement happens at the end of a long, exhausting road. They save a little, invest passively, then wonder why their account barely grows after years of sacrifice. What they don't realize is they're quitting right before the magic happens, right before their money finally starts working harder than they do. I'm about to reveal the exact system that can compress 40 years of traditional retirement planning into 10 years of strategic wealth building. And the final breakthrough? It's a psychological shift so powerful that it transforms you from someone who works for money into someone money works for. Hit subscribe and comment Freedom in 10 if you're ready to learn the real plan that Wall Street doesn't want you to discover. The first breakthrough will shock you because it happens when you least expect it. 1. The tipping point. The first breakthrough that changes everything is recognizing the exact moment when your money starts working harder than you do. Most people work for decades without ever experiencing this transformation because they don't understand what they're building toward. They save, invest, and sacrifice for years, wondering if they'll ever see real progress. What they don't realize is there's a specific tipping point where everything flips, where compound returns officially overtake your labor as the primary driver of your wealth. But that's just the obvious part. The first breakthrough will shock you because it happens when you least expect it. In the mountain villages where master craftsmen created works of legendary beauty, there lived a skilled woodworker whose journey from laborer to leader perfectly illustrated the transformation that separates the financially free from the forever working. During his early years, this craftsman worked alone in his small workshop, carving furniture piece by piece with his own hands. Every chair, table, and cabinet required his personal attention from start to finish. His income was directly tied to his physical effort. When he worked, money flowed in. When he rested, earnings stopped completely. Despite his exceptional skill and long hours, there seemed to be a ceiling on what one pair of hands could accomplish. The craftsman's days were filled with sawing, carving, and polishing. But his wealth grew slowly because he was still in the system. As years passed, the craftsman made a crucial decision that would change his financial destiny forever. Instead of continuing to work alone, he began training apprentices. At first, this seemed counterproductive. Teaching others took time away from his own productive work, and paying wages reduced his immediate profits. However, the craftsman understood something profound about leverage and multiplication. Gradually, his workshop transformed from a one-man operation into a coordinated team of skilled workers. While the master craftsman focused on design and quality control, his apprentices handled the detailed execution. The workshop's output multiplied dramatically without requiring additional hours from the master himself. More importantly, the business began generating income even when the craftsman was away, attending to other ventures or simply resting. One morning, the craftsman realized something extraordinary had occurred. His workshop had earned more in the previous month than he could have produced working alone for an entire year. His role had evolved from pushing the creative process forward through personal effort to steering and directing a system that operated with increasing independence. Here's what that story reveals about your wealth-building journey. At $100,000 invested earning 10% annually, your money generates $10,000 without you lifting a finger. At $500,000, that's $50,000 yearly. Your role transforms from working for money to directing money to work for you. Here's where most people miss the real magic of compound growth and give up right before the exponential curve begins. 2. The psychology of compound growth. The second breakthrough is understanding why most people quit right before the magic happens. Compound growth has a cruel psychological trick built into it. The first few years feel like nothing is happening. You save, invest, skip luxuries, and your account barely moves. This invisible growth phase is exactly when most people lose faith and abandon their plan, not realizing they're standing just steps away from the exponential curve that would change their lives forever. Here's where most people miss the real magic of compound growth and give up right before the exponential curve begins. In the fertile valleys, where ancient agricultural wisdom was passed down through generations, there lived two farmers who received identical gifts from a traveling merchant. Rare seeds that promised extraordinary harvests, but only for those patient enough to nurture them properly. Both farmers understood the potential value, but their approaches to cultivation would reveal everything about the psychology of long-term growth versus instant gratification. The first farmer was eager to see immediate results from his investment. After planting his seeds with great care and anticipation, he would visit his fields daily, sometimes multiple times, searching for signs of progress. When weeks passed with no visible growth above ground, his excitement turned to frustration. "These seeds are defective," he complained to his neighbors. "I've been watering and tending them for months, and there's nothing to show for it." After a full season of seemingly fruitless effort, the impatient farmer became convinced he'd been deceived. He dug up his carefully planted seeds, expecting to find them rotted or worthless. Instead, he discovered that beneath the surface, an intricate root system had been developing, preparing to support tremendous growth. But because he couldn't see this invisible progress, he had lost faith in the process entirely. The second farmer understood something profound about the nature of compound growth that his neighbor had missed. He knew that the most important development often happens completely out of sight. While his fields appeared unchanged for many months, he continued his daily care routine, trusting that invisible forces were working beneath the surface. This patient farmer had learned from his grandfather that true growth follows two distinct phases. First, an invisible foundation building period where nothing seems to happen, followed by explosive, visible expansion that appears almost magical to outside observers. When the breakthrough finally came, his harvest was so abundant that it exceeded his wildest expectations, providing not just immediate prosperity, but seeds for even greater future plantings. Here's what that story reveals about wealth-building psychology. Compounding works like a slow-motion avalanche, tiny and invisible at first, then unstoppable once it reaches critical mass. The danger is quitting during the invisible phase, right before your financial snowball gains enough momentum to become self-sustaining. Wait, the most important part is understanding this architectural approach that keeps your wealth machine running for decades. 3. Portfolio architecture. The third breakthrough is understanding that building wealth with only one type of investment is like constructing a house with only one material. It might stand for a while, but it's not prepared for every storm. Most people think investing means buy some stocks or put it all in a savings account, but that approach leaves you vulnerable to market crashes, inflation, or economic shifts that can destroy decades of progress. A truly resilient early retirement portfolio requires three distinct foundations working together. Wait, the most important part is understanding this architectural approach that keeps your wealth machine running for decades. In the mountainous borderlands where hostile armies frequently invaded and natural disasters struck without warning, there lived a master architect who was commissioned to build a fortress that could withstand any conceivable threat. Unlike other builders who relied on single construction methods, this architect had witnessed too many impregnable castles fall to understand that true security required multiple layers of protection. The architect designed his fortress with 3 distinct foundation systems, each serving a different defensive purpose. The first foundation was built for power and expansion. Massive stone structures that could support towering battlements and accommodate growth as the kingdom prospered. These foundations were designed to rise high and intimidate enemies, representing the offensive capability of the fortress. The second foundation focused on daily sustainability and resource generation. The architect incorporated workshops, granaries, and income-producing facilities that could feed and supply the fortress inhabitants indefinitely. These practical structures weren't glamorous, but they ensured the fortress could function independently without relying on external support during extended sieges. The third foundation prioritized survival and protection during catastrophic events. Deep underground storage vaults, alternative water sources, and reinforced shelters that could protect inhabitants when everything else failed. This foundation might never be needed, but if disaster struck, it would mean the difference between survival and destruction. When enemy armies eventually came, some attacked with overwhelming force, others with prolonged sieges, and some used unexpected strategies that had defeated other fortresses. But the 3-foundation design proved unbreakable. The power foundations repelled direct attacks, the resource foundations sustained the defenders indefinitely, and the protection foundations preserved the fortress during the worst assaults. Here's what that story reveals about portfolio construction. Growth assets like index funds and dividend stocks are your power foundations. They build wealth and generate capital appreciation. Income producers like REITs and rental properties are your resource foundations. They provide steady cash flow for daily expenses. Stability assets like treasury bonds and high-yield savings are your protection foundations. They preserve capital during market disasters and provide liquidity when opportunities arise. This next strategy separates the financially free from the forever working, and it's about scaling income while keeping lifestyle constant. 4. Income and savings strategy. The fourth breakthrough is realizing you cannot save your way to early retirement. You need both offense and defense. Most people focus only on cutting expenses, while their income stays flat, wondering why their progress feels glacial. The math is brutal. Earning $4,000 monthly and saving 10% gives you only $400 monthly to invest. Even with solid 10% returns, that's just $77,000 after 10 years. Nowhere near enough for financial independence. The real secret is aggressively scaling income while keeping lifestyle inflation completely frozen. This next strategy separates the financially free from the forever working, and it's about scaling income while keeping lifestyle constant. In the ancient kingdom of Prosperitia, there ruled a wise monarch whose approach to expanding the royal treasury became legendary among neighboring rulers. Unlike kings who hoarded their existing wealth or those who spent lavishly as their kingdoms grew, this monarch had discovered a systematic method for accelerating treasury growth that seemed almost magical to outside observers. During the early years of his reign, the kingdom generated modest tax revenues from farming and basic trade. The monarch lived comfortably but not extravagantly, maintaining a royal lifestyle appropriate for a small kingdom. However, instead of increasing his personal spending as revenues grew, he made a decision that would transform his realm's destiny forever. As the kingdom expanded and tax revenues doubled from new territories and improved trade routes, the monarch made a radical choice. He kept his personal expenses exactly the same as when the kingdom was half its current size. Every additional gold coin that flowed into the treasury was immediately deployed to fund new income-generating projects rather than to upgrade his already comfortable lifestyle. The monarch invested the surplus revenues in building roads that increased trade establishing workshops that produced valuable goods and creating agricultural improvements that boosted crop yields. Each investment generated more income, which was again reinvested rather than spent on personal luxuries. His advisors were puzzled by this approach, wondering why the king didn't enjoy the fruits of his expanding wealth. Within a decade, something extraordinary had occurred. The kingdom's wealth generation had increased tenfold, not just from territorial expansion, but from the compounding effect of consistently reinvesting surplus income. The monarch's personal comfort had remained constant, but his actual power and security had grown exponentially. Here's what that story reveals about income scaling strategy. When your monthly income rises from $4,000 to $10,000, resist lifestyle inflation. That extra $6,000 becomes $6,000 monthly in investments rather than $600. Treat every pay raise, bonus, or side income as hiring new financial workers rather than upgrading your lifestyle. The monarch understood that present comfort sacrificed for systematic investment creates future abundance that far exceeds any temporary pleasure. All of the above becomes meaningless if you fall into this psychological trap about maintaining your wealth forest. 6. Rule of 72 and compound math. The sixth breakthrough is discovering the ancient mathematical secret that can tell you exactly when you'll reach financial freedom. Most people invest blindly, hoping their money will somehow grow without understanding the precise mechanics of compound returns. But there's a simple formula that reveals the timeline to wealth with startling accuracy: the Rule of 72. This isn't just math, it's your early retirement countdown clock. And once you understand its power, you'll never think about time and money the same way again. You think you understand early retirement math? This ancient doubling secret reveals why time is more powerful than you imagine. In the bustling trade centers of the ancient Silk Road, there lived a merchant whose mathematical discoveries about wealth multiplication became the foundation for every successful trading empire that followed. Unlike other traders who relied on intuition and luck, this merchant had uncovered a numerical pattern that could predict with remarkable precision how long it would take to double any investment. The merchant's revelation came during a particularly challenging period when he needed to calculate whether various trading ventures would provide sufficient returns within specific timeframes. Traditional merchants would guess at profits and timelines, often making disastrous decisions based on wishful thinking rather than mathematical reality. Through careful observation of successful trades over many years, the merchant discovered that there was a mystical relationship between growth rates and doubling periods. He found that by taking the number 72 and dividing it by any annual return rate, he could determine exactly how many years it would take for wealth to double. When trading spices that typically return 12% annually, the merchant calculated 72 divided by 12, revealing that his investment would double every 6 years. For precious metals with more modest 8% returns, the calculation showed doubling every 9 years. This mathematical insight allowed him to make strategic decisions about which ventures to pursue based on precise timelines rather than vague hopes. The merchant began applying this knowledge systematically. Starting with 1,000 gold coins invested at 10% returns, he knew with certainty that his wealth would follow a predictable progression. 2,000 coins after 7.2 years, 4,000 coins after 14.4 years, 8,000 coins after 21.6 years. This wasn't guesswork, it was mathematical inevitability. Most importantly, the merchant realized that small increases in return rates dramatically shortened doubling periods. Improving from 8 to 12% returns didn't just increase profits by 4%, it reduced the doubling time from 9 years to 6 years, a massive acceleration in wealth building. Here's what that story reveals about your retirement timeline. At 10% annual returns, your money doubles every 7.2 years. Start with $50,000 today, and you'll have $100,000 in about 7 years, $200,000 in 14 years, $400,000 in 21 years. The Rule of 72 shows why starting early matters more than investing large amounts later. The following story explains why most people work for 40 years unnecessarily when mindset determines everything. 7. Mindset transformation. The seventh breakthrough is the most profound, recognizing that early retirement isn't just about accumulating money, it's about becoming a completely different type of person. Before the tipping point, your questions are tactical. How do I earn more? How do I save more? How do I invest better? After the tipping point, your questions become strategic. How do I make sure this wealth machine runs forever? What systems protect the life I've built? This transformation from worker mindset to investor mindset changes how you see every financial decision for the rest of your life. The following story explains why most people work for 40 years unnecessarily when mindset determines everything. In the military academies, where future leaders learned the art of command, there lived a young soldier whose evolution from foot soldier to commanding general perfectly illustrated the mental transformation that separates those who work for money from those who money works for. During his early years in service, this soldier focused entirely on individual tasks and immediate survival. As a common foot soldier, his world revolved around personal performance, following orders precisely, maintaining his equipment, and completing assigned missions. His success was measured by his ability to execute tasks efficiently and avoid mistakes. The soldier's mindset was entirely tactical. He thought in terms of daily objectives, immediate challenges, and personal effort. Every achievement required his direct involvement and physical presence. The soldier excelled at this level, earning recognition for his dedication and skill. However, his role required constant personal effort, and his impact was limited to what one person could accomplish. When he wasn't actively working, nothing happened. His value to the army was directly proportional to his individual output and availability. As the soldier advanced through the ranks, something fundamental began shifting in his thinking. Instead of focusing solely on his own performance, he started understanding systems, logistics, and the broader strategic picture. He learned to think beyond immediate tasks toward long-term campaigns and sustainable operations. When the soldier finally achieved the rank of general, his entire relationship with work had transformed completely. Instead of asking, "What tasks do I need to complete today?" he now asked, "What systems ensure this army succeeds whether I'm present or not?" Instead of measuring success by personal effort, he measured it by the effectiveness of the systems he had created and the people he had developed. The general's role was no longer about individual performance, but about strategic positioning, resource allocation, and building systems that could operate independently. His greatest victories came not from personal heroics, but from creating conditions where success became inevitable. Here's what that story reveals about the wealth mindset. Early in your journey, you trade time for money like a foot soldier trading effort for wages. After reaching financial critical mass, you think like a general, deploying resources strategically, building systems that work without you, and protecting the empire you've created. This is the moment where everything clicks about why the traditional approach keeps people trapped for decades. 8. The traditional retirement trap. The eighth and final breakthrough is recognizing that the 40-year retirement plan you've been taught is not just slow, it's completely unnecessary. Traditional financial advice tells you to work until 65, save a modest percentage, and hope your nest egg lasts through retirement. This approach keeps you trapped in the worker mindset for decades, when a strategic approach could set you free in 10 years. The greatest tragedy isn't that people work so long, it's that they never realize there was always a faster path to the same destination. This is the moment where everything clicks about why the traditional approach keeps people trapped for decades. In the treacherous mountain ranges where travelers sought to reach the prosperous valley beyond, there existed two well-established routes that led to the same destination but offered vastly different journeys. Most travelers followed the traditional path that had been used for generations, while a few adventurous souls discovered a hidden route that achieved the same goal in a fraction of the time. The traditional mountain path was wide, well-marked, and appeared safe to nervous travelers. Guides assured everyone that this was the responsible way to reach the valley, emphasizing that slow and steady progress was the only reliable method. The path wound around the mountain in countless switchbacks, requiring 40 years of steady climbing to reach the destination. Along the way, travelers were encouraged to carry heavy packs of security supplies that actually slowed their progress significantly. Most travelers accepted this lengthy journey as inevitable, believing they had no choice but to follow the established route. They would meet other climbers who had been walking for 20, 30, or even 35 years, still far from their destination. These veteran travelers would share stories about how hard the journey was, how much further they still had to go, and how important it was to stay the course despite the slow progress. However, a small group of innovative travelers discovered a different approach. Instead of following the winding, traditional path, they studied the mountain carefully and found a steep but direct route that required intense effort for 10 years rather than moderate effort for 40 years. This path demanded different skills, equipment, and strategies, but it delivered the same outcome in a quarter of the time. The key difference wasn't that the alternative route was easier. It actually required more discipline, planning, and strategic thinking. But these travelers understood something the traditional climbers missed. Working intensely for 10 years was infinitely better than working moderately for 40 years, especially when both paths led to identical destinations. Here's what that story reveals about retirement planning. The traditional path keeps you climbing for 4 decades because it profits others, not because it's your only option. The strategic path requires more discipline initially, but delivers freedom when you're young enough to enjoy it. The choice is yours: 40 years of moderate effort or 10 years of strategic intensity. There you have it. The 8 breakthroughs that can compress 40 years of traditional retirement planning into 10 years of strategic wealth building. Recognizing the tipping point when money works harder than you, surviving the psychology of invisible compound growth, building 3-layer portfolio architecture, scaling income while freezing lifestyle inflation, continuously feeding your wealth forest, leveraging the Rule of 72's doubling power, transforming from worker to general mindset, and escaping the traditional 40-year retirement trap. Here's the powerful truth. You have a choice between 40 years of moderate effort or 10 years of strategic intensity. Both paths lead to the same destination, but only one lets you enjoy freedom while you're young enough to truly live it. Your challenge this week: pick one breakthrough and take action. Maybe it's increasing your income, cutting lifestyle inflation, or building your first diversified portfolio. Which breakthrough hit you hardest? Comment your current age plus the number that resonated most. If this completely changed your timeline to freedom, smash subscribe and share it with someone trapped in the 40-year cycle. Remember, the first 10 years aren't the sacrifice. They're the shortcut to everything you've ever wanted.